I'm Jean Todt, and I'm pleased to know that you are listening Beyond the Grid.
Hello everyone, Tom Clarkson here, and welcome to your favourite podcast. It's Beyond the Grid, presented by Bose Quiet Comfort 35.2 wireless headphones. My guest this week is one of motorsport's high achievers. In a career spanning 50 years, he's won pretty much everything, from rallying to the Paris-Dakar to Le Mans and the Formula One World Championship. And as if that wasn't enough, he's currently in his third term as president of the FIA and in the throes of working on F1's 2021 rules, among other things. I'm talking, of course, about Jean Todt. To F1 fans, Jean is most famous for leading Ferrari to multiple F1 world titles in the 2000s. And as mighty as that domination was, and don't forget that Schumacher's driver's title in 2000 was Ferrari's first since 1979, you need to remember that Todt's achievements extend far beyond Maranello. He was a successful rally co-driver before taking the reins at Peugeot Sport and dominating all forms of rallying and the World Sportscar Championship. Jean is an intense character. He's a self-confessed workaholic who doesn't take holidays and only looks forward. So it was interesting and surprising to sit down with him for an hour at Silverstone recently, with cars buzzing in the background, and to ask him to reflect. After all, this is a man who rarely has an hour to spare. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Jean, welcome to Beyond the Grid. It's fantastic to have you on the show. I'd like to start by taking you back to 1993. You've just started at Ferrari. What state was the team in when you arrived?
We are talking about the 1st of July, 1993. It was not the easiest situation, but I was prepared to that, because before accepting the challenge, of course, I was informed how things were, what was the level of the challenge. And I remember Alain Prost telling me, you will not be able to resist more than 1.5 years, 2 years. And it's, knowing that the challenge was going to be tough, that maybe it gave me extra motivation to face it. And when I arrived, then, first I tried to make myself my own opinion, to analyze the situation. And, if you are a doctor, you see a patient and you try to then define the right prescriptions.
Okay. Why did you accept the job? If we just go back a little bit, you'd had lots of success with Peugeot. You just finished 1, 2, 3 at Le Mans. Why did you need Ferrari?
Because, first, when I was at Peugeot, incidentally, I thought I would end up my professional career at Peugeot. But I always take the example of climbing the mountain. So I started as a rally co-driver, then went to run a rally team, which was very successful. Then we went to cross country, which were very successful. Then sports car, which were very successful. And then I thought, okay, I did my time with motor racing. I want to do something else in the group. And it did not happen like that, because the top management at the time saw that I was important to run the motorsport activities, and that was it. And that was not my way of seeing the things.
Had Peugeot entered Formula One with its own team, would you have stayed?
So, it was part of the agreement I had with Peugeot. First, I thought it would have been a good move for Peugeot to go to Formula One, but nevertheless, my decision was to do something else. And maybe it's a paradox because I went to Ferrari to run Formula One, but simply because Ferrari was special to me. You know, Ferrari is the kind of icon of GT car, icon of motor racing, and I was never expecting to get this challenge offered to me, and that's why I loved it, and I thought that bringing Ferrari at the highest level of success in Formula One will be a special achievement. Nothing compared by competing with a company like Peugeot in Formula One.
How intimidating was it when you first turned up in Maranello? Could you speak Italian at the time?
No, in fact, my first, I must say, all my discussion with at the time with Luca di Montezemolo did not happen at Ferrari headquarters because people would have recognized us, and we wanted to keep it secret. But my first official contact with Ferrari on the 1st of July was going to a Grand Prix, which was incidentally the French Grand Prix in Manicourt. So I first attended the Grand Prix as team principal, and then on Monday after the Grand Prix, I arrived in Maranello, where I discovered my office.
God, how amazing. Well, let's talk drivers. You had a Lacian Berger at the time. Was it clear to you that you needed a change on that front?
No, I go back to what I was mentioning earlier. I wanted to analyze the situation, to understand the situation, and at the time, it was not a kind of unified analysis of the situation. Chassis people were saying that it was the engine which was not working. Engine was saying that it was the chassis. Then everybody was saying, but we don't have the proper drivers. So it was just, honestly, it was a mess. And so I considered at the time that if we had a driver who would not be able to be discussed, and in fact, at the time, the driver who was in this situation was Ayrton Senna. Unfortunately, Ayrton Senna in '94 decided to go to Williams because we could not offer him a drive in '94. And he had this tragic accident in Imola. And that was when Michael started, to emerge. And he became world champion in '94. Then we discussed with him in '95. And in August, end of July, early August '95, he signed for Ferrari in '96. So this parameter of having one driver which could not be discussed was achieved.
So that was the first thing to do, is to take the driver out of the questioning, and then from that you could then work on the technical side. Was that your thinking?
No, that was, we needed to rebuild everything. But clearly the parameter of driver had to be addressed. And by taking Michael, it was addressed. But still, we had to rebuild the chassis department. We had to create the proper facilities. At the time, the chassis department was in UK, which for me was something which was not had all what was needed. We needed to have everybody under the same roof. And if you remember, at the time, Ferrari was the only team producing chassis and engine. So I wanted everybody under the same roof. And clearly we needed also to work to have a proper engine.
What did John Barnard say to you when you said Guildford in the UK is not working? Did you invite him to Maranello, or was it clear that you needed someone?
Oh, yes, of course. We had good discussions. Good discussion, but for him it was out of thoughts to come and spend his life in Maranello. It was something which was not new, because he had contacts and he collaborated with Ferrari for many years before he left, and he came back, and I think he understood. Maybe he was not happy about the decision, but he understood the decision. But anyway, it was a decision which could not be changed.
So was Michael Schumacher's impact on the team immediate?
Discipline, because we knew that he was a great driver, very efficient, very organized, very pragmatic, and we knew that he will not tolerate being in a team with amateurs. So we had immediately to demonstrate that Ferrari was a very professional and organized and structured team.
Was there one thing that stood out about him? Yes, brilliant driver, but outside of the car, why was he the answer outside of the car?
Because simply, Michael was always very curious, very available to participate to the development of the team, very, very engaged, and he was the first interested. He came to Ferrari because he wanted to be world champion with Ferrari. So he had to give a very strong contribution. But quickly he understood that we were on the right track.
Was it a difficult sell to him? You couldn't guarantee that he was going to win a world championship in year one, could you? What was the plan when he arrived? Did you have a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan?
No, he arrived in 96. Honestly, I don't remember. But I think it was a 3 years contract. And he knew that we were in a kind of rebuilding phase of the team. He knew that. He knew I had contact with some of the people he knew well. And I had a contact with Rose Brown and with Rory Byrne. Incidentally, they did not know individually that I had contact with one of them. And I remember when, after I signed Ross and Rory, I suggested that they should be aware of it. And I invited to go for a drink and to celebrate that they will be coming together to work at Ferrari. But they did not know at all that they were going to work together.
How amazing. How much more difficult is it to hire people for Ferrari? Because it's in England,
No, it's in Italy.
Well, it's in Italy. I'll get my geography sorted out. Is it much harder to lure people? Because it's such an Anglo-centric sport, isn't it?
Yes, at the time, I must say, people were always scared to come to Italy because, family issues. And they saw that it was going to be a very political team, very difficult to adapt themselves in Italy. So they were not all, keen to take the challenge. But, that was part of the thing I had to convince them.
You mentioned the word politics. How political was Ferrari back then?
Honestly, I never suffered really about politics at Ferrari. It was clearly a team with a lot of attention around because, as I was mentioning earlier, Ferrari being a kind of a legendary organization, I mean, it tried to say that it's a big attention from the outside. So, and big attention and big expectation. And that's part of the game. So it's never something which really worried me.
Was Peugeot quite a good school for you prior to going to Ferrari? In a way, are they quite similar beasts, Peugeot and Ferrari, the sporting side?
I would say all my career has been a good school. First I went to university, which was a kind of the appetizer. Then I was a rally co-driver, where I did rallies with a lot of drivers, with a lot of teams, and my role was above being only a co-driver. I remember being also appointed as the representative of the drivers in the FIA. That was the first contact with me and the FIA. So long time ago, we are talking about 40 years ago, and it did prepare me to my next stage, which was to become a team director of a rally team. So, as I was mentioning earlier, climbing the mountain was for me a kind of learning process. But I still learn every day today, which is probably where I still have passion, because I'm still curious of making things better in a different surrounding, different challenges. So on that, it's something I always enjoyed a lot.
But did you feel the pressure of representing a nation, representing Italy? Did you personally feel that pressure?
Not really, but probably on this specific point, it was an advantage being a foreigner, because I was only focused of achieving what we needed to achieve for the final result. But unfortunately, it took a lot of time, and I remember a couple of days ago, I was in London to see the premiere of this movie, Heroes. And you see how in 97, in the last 10 minutes, Michael loses a driver title. 98, last race. 99, last race, this time was Eddie Irvine. And fortunately, we got the Manufacturers' Championship until it changed in 2000, but 2000 was not obvious. At the beginning of the season, we were not favorite, and finally things moved, but we put so much effort for that.
How frustrating were those years you've just described, 97, 98, 99? Did you ever stop believing?
But it started before, because I joined Ferrari, as we mentioned earlier, 1st of July 93. So 94, with Gerhard Berger, we won a Grand Prix. I think it was the German Grand Prix. 95, with Jean Todt, we won one Grand Prix, which was in Canada. 96, Michael joined. We won 3 Grand Prix. And the expectation was immediate at this time. So we had to pass 96, to pass 97, 98, 99, until we could achieve something. So it was amazing pressure. And I must say here we created a very strong solidarity, all together to resist together. And probably that created unique links which are still existing now.
Was it difficult to keep the motivation of the team up when you were going through those difficult times?
Motivation was always there. Motivation was always there. And I must say, and I had always been there even once we had success. So we were determined, like a war machine, ambitious and determined to achieve the results and to keep the results.
Now, look, you mentioned Jerez 97, such a huge moment in that season, but it's also one of the sort of most memorable moments in modern Formula One history, that collision between Michael and Jacques Villeneuve. How surprised were you that Michael did that? That he turned in on Jacques?
I mean, honestly, not surprised. You know, it's part of the history of motorsport. You have a lot of other examples, you know, which have been much worse than with Michael and Villeneuve. I mean, if you remember, Prost and Senna, 2 years in a row, you know. So, I mean, that's part of the controversy in motorsport, in Formula One. And so, I don't say it's always good, but it's part of the story, and we still see these kind of things.
Did you ever try and sit down with Michael and understand why he did that?
But it was a protection. He wanted to protect his position. He did not protect it well, because if he would have protected it well, it would have worked. It did not work. So, you know, he was heavily punished. The team was punished. And but as I said, talking about that, 22 years after, it has created some unique links with us, because we kept together. Nobody escaped, you know.
Was it just he just had this incredible desire to win, that he would do anything? Is that how you explain it in your mind?
But you know, anything, you know, again, you must accept the pressure. You must accept the challenges the drivers are facing to get their result. You know, to get what they are dreaming of. So sometimes the way to achieve it is not rational, but you don't realize in the heat of the moment. So you do things that if you think carefully, you will not do.
Jean, what was it like being Michael Schumacher when he was racing for Ferrari? Can you just give us a glimpse into what it was like being him when he was racing for you, in terms of the pressure he was under, the adulation he went through? Was it difficult to keep his feet on the ground?
No, Michael has always been with his feet on the ground, which probably helped him to be so successful over the years, because Michael always was full of doubt about his capacity of winning with a Formula One car.
He doubted himself.
He did. Every year before the start of the season, he was asking me to have a private session in Fiorano to make sure that he was still a good driver.
Every season? That's amazing.
Every year.
But I suppose, and he kept improving and learning because of that doubt, I suppose.
I think he had always been anxious, and it's something we have been sharing. Anxious not to be good enough. And that's what made him so good, because he was able to put himself into question.
So can you just shed some light now on Suzuka 2000? After the disappointment of 97, 98, 99, you guys finally get the job done. Tremendous race, that one as well, wasn't it? As it just taken in isolation, but was it relief? Was it joy?
No, that was relief. And
was that the overriding emotion?
Well, when I took Michael to the podium, I mean, going up, climbing the metallic stairs to go to the podium, I told him, Michael, our life, professional life, will never be the same, because we achieved what we wanted to achieve. And clearly that was something very, very special for everybody, because it was, also a reward of so much pain, so much effort, so much difficult times, and that was finally getting the fruit of it.
And then, of course, once you start winning, you don't stop. What was it like to ride that crest of a wave when you guys were just dominating Formula One?
It's never something we completely realized, and we were so focused. We were so focused to the success that we were concentrating on each single detail as if we would never have won a Grand Prix. So, it was really a full focus to make things well.
And so when you were winning the title, or was it Magny-Cours, I think, in 2004?
Yeah, that was amazing.
that was bonkers. It was so early. You didn't even let yourself relax after that.
No, and then we won the Manufacturers' Championship a couple of races after in Budapest. And I remember being on the grid in Monza, and I was anxious like hell about the outcome of the result. And then I speak to myself, and I said, but you are already world champion. So what do you care about? But it was, as I was mentioning, it was in our gene, just being competitive and not realizing what we had achieved before.
So when you look back at your time at Ferrari, what makes you proudest?
To have resisted. Really,
lasted more than a year and a half, or what Alain Prost said
to have, going back to what Alain told me, you cannot resist 2 years. And finally, I decided to leave. First, I wanted to leave in 2004, and had a long discussion with Luca Di Montezemolo, who was the chairman, and he did not let me go, and he proposed me to become the CEO of the company, which was difficult for me to refuse.
Can I just ask, why did you want to leave?
Because I thought I did my time. I did what I was committed to do as the boss of the team, and that I was ready for a new chapter. And in fact, he offered me something I was not expecting, again, being the CEO of Ferrari, and everybody wanted me to stay. So I was not brave enough to decide to leave until I did it in fact, 2008. I left my position, and I remained 1 year as a kind of consultant, to prepare the next steps, and I left in April 2009, 10 years now.
How different was the job when you were CEO of Ferrari compared to just the Scuderia?
Of course, I had an overall view on the leadership of the whole company, but of course I was still always very focused on what was happening on the sporting side. I appointed Stefano Domenicali to take the position of team principal, but I was still monitoring on daily basis the racing division, and of course I was in charge of the production side, of the GT side, but it's not something which was completely new for me, because I was in the board of Ferrari since already a few years. So I was always very interested about the development of the whole organization. So for me, it was not kind of a real different life for me.
And your skills as a manager, a lot of people I talked to about you would walk over hot coals for you. Why do you think that is? Why you seem to have this connection with the people that work for you?
No, I must say that is, sometimes very emotional for me, because I left Peugeot in 93. 30th of June. And so it's now 26 years. And still I see people and they remind me the time we have been spending together, and same with people at Ferrari. I mean, simply, I think because we have been sharing amazing time, and probably, I mean, I always try to give a lot of myself to the team, to the people, as they gave a lot in return to me, and it created a good combination. So probably, I mean, this combination, will remain or has remained.
More from Jean in just a moment. But first this. F1 takes me around the world throughout the year, and it's important that I stay informed about what's happening both back home in England and the places I visit. I want real stories and honest journalism in a time when real facts mean more than ever. And I found that in The Economist. The topics it covers between its pages stretch much further than just economics and finance. There's in-depth analysis of world politics and business, science, technology, the arts, the environment, and sport. And what caught my eye in the latest edition was the anniversary of the moon landing. Included in their coverage was an article about the next 50 years of space travel, really fascinating. And it leads me to say that The Economist is the smart guide to the forces changing your world. And it has been a trusted source of intelligence for more than 170 years. And it's really easy to see why. But don't just take my word for it. Get your hands on a free copy of The Economist now. Just text GRID, G-R-I-D, to 78070. Text GRID to 78070 for your free print copy. Now let's get back to Jean. You mentioned again your time with Peugeot. I'm going to ask you, is rallying your first love?
No, I mean, on that I must say I'm quite flexible, and each chapter of my life, and I'm blessed for that, has been a loved one. So, being passionate about cars is one chapter. Being a rally co-driver was another chapter. Peugeot, rally, another one. Cross country, sport car, Ferrari, now FIA, United Nations. Again, I feel blessed to be able to have had and still have responsibility in campus activities where I love to think I can make a contribution.
Is it true that you used to, I'm not quite sure what the right word is here, that you used to borrow your mum and dad's Mini Cooper when you were young?
Yeah, that's true.
To go rallying.
But, my father was very weak with me, and even if he did not have a lot of means, but he was always willing to please me. And sometimes I did things I should not have done, but maybe I learned out of that.
Were you a good driver? Don't be modest.
I was maybe a bit wild driver, but I was quite quick. But for many years I was considering that I would be a successful driver until I changed my target, my ambitions, and that's sometimes important choices which give you a different life. I don't know how it would have been, but I must say the choices I did, I'm happy I did them.
Now, you've won in pretty much every motorsport discipline possible, the rallying, the Paris-Dakar, Le Mans, Formula One. How do those compare from your vantage point?
From my?
Just for you, with your dealings with each of those categories, how did they compare? Which was the hardest to win?
The hardest definitely was Ferrari, because I was a foreigner. I was a foreigner and I was involved in a category of motorsport where I had no experience. So, and it was probably the most difficult environment. So that was the most difficult challenge, but probably the most rewarding challenge I had to face.
And when you were a rally co-driver, what was it like sitting next to the Guy Friquelins and Hannu Mikkelus, it must have scary. I don't know what's the right word.
First time I really sat next to a professional driver with NSU. That was in '66, 50 years ago, with Guy Chasseuil, was a professional driver, and I must say, I had a bigger expectation. I thought I would not understand what is happening, and I understood. So it was not kind of a scary discovery, and the few times I did not understand what was happening, we were off the road. So for me, I must say it was more spectacular outside than inside of the car. But we had some great memories, and sometimes when I think of those memories, I have some nostalgia, which is a good feeling.
And what about the Group B rally cars of the mid-'80s? I mean, they were complete monsters, weren't they? What are your memories of them?
No, they were, but first, that was a great adventure, because the decision to go into rallying with Peugeot, with a Group B car, and to face competitors like Audi, like Lancia, was a very difficult decision. And finally, it became a very successful decision, because we became the dominator in rallying until it was considered to be too dangerous, and this category was banned, and we moved to cross country, which is another kind of adventure.
Is there a great story that one of your cars was stolen on the Paris-Dakar? You were about to win your 4th consecutive Dakar.
No, which we won. We won with the other car.
Oh, you won with the other, but the one that was leading. What can you just tell us what happened there?
That's still a story, unfortunately, where we don't know who was behind that. But arriving, I was in my room in Bamako, and the car had been serviced part of the night. And every morning, I was expecting a phone call to go to the start of the day. And I got a phone call maybe a bit earlier than usual. And our responsible told me Harry's car had disappeared. So...
what does the boss say to that?
I thought it was a joke until I got a phone call from people asking me money if we wanted to get back the car. So then I took that seriously and went down to the reception and realized that the car had disappeared. So of course we tried to find the car, but unfortunately we did not find it until 11 o'clock in the morning. The start was about 7 o'clock in the morning. And when we found the car, 30 kilometers from the city, Harry took the start last, so he had to overtake about 150 cars, lorries. I know that, which was a disaster. And until we got told that he was going to be disqualified because he did not start in due time. So we tried to challenge this decision for 3 or 4 days until we realized that we lost this challenge. And fortunately, Juha Kankinen won the rally, but it's an amazing story.
Amazing story. With
a lot of speculations behind, and as usual, false speculation, but that means a story.
Crikey. Can I ask you about the dangers in motorsport? For instance, the Group B rallying, and the cars were so fast, and the crowds that you had back then. Did you ever struggle to justify motorsport in your mind with all those dangers and the potential possibility?
Motorsport has always been a dangerous sport. fortunately, over the last decades, we have improved a lot safety in motorsport, which still remains dangerous. But clearly, 30, 40 years ago, it was much more dangerous than it is now. And I will say we are blessed to be in such a period. Nevertheless, every day we need to try to make motor racing safer. And what I keep saying, motor racing is not only a show, but also has to be a laboratory to be able to implement some of this safety on normal road cars. And probably one of the reasons I have such a passion, having had so many experiences, sometimes very strong, sad experiences, that I want to be a contributor to make roads safer now around the world.
So, in your career, now Henri Toivonen, I know he wasn't driving for you, but then the accident that Felipe Massa had, for example, in Hungary 2009.
I was the CEO of the Ferrari when it happened.
With Felipe?
No, sorry. In 2009, I left Ferrari. I was not anymore at Ferrari. And I remember when it happened, I was in our country house with my team preparing my campaign as president of the FIA. And we watched that on TV. And my son is the manager of Felipe. So immediately I spoke with him on the phone, and I realized how serious it was. And incidentally, next day with Michael, we flew to see him in the hospital in Budapest. But it was a terrible time.
How did that affect you in the longer term in terms of what you wanted to then achieve?
In
your presidency of the FIA?
As I said, I knew and I know that motorsport is dangerous, so we need to try to do the utmost to make it safer. But hurting Felipe is like a second son for me. So it was very bad. But fortunately, that's why sometimes, when we speak about, his failure to become a world champion in 2008, it's very little compared to how blessed he was to be able to escape from this terrible accident. Can you imagine getting one shock absorber from the car in front of you on your in-lap without even competing for a lap time, which is something, amazing. You have, so that's why sometimes in your life you have things which are completely unexpected. You were talking about the car, which was stolen, which was not a physical thing, but it's something absolutely unique. Having such an accident where, fortunately, today it's simply a bad memory. That's interesting experiences.
While we're talking about drivers, I think your office has got pictures of Jim Clark on the wall, and Jack Brabham as well. Am I right?
No, only Jim Clark. No, but
only Jim Clark.
Yeah, okay. But it's what I was telling you, because that's each part of my life is a chapter, and the Jim Clark photo is a chapter of my passion for motorsport. So, and for me, he was a kind of my model in motorsport. When we were talking about a driver for which, I had a special respect, consideration was Jim Clark.
What was it about Jim Clark?
Simply, everything. He was successful. He seemed to be a very nice person. I love the color of his helmet. So it's a lot of things sometimes you cannot explain. But he was, and he's still special for me.
It makes me ask, where did your passion for motorsport come from? Because Jimmy would have been killed when you were in your early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
What was your first exposure to motorsport? What made you go and borrow your dad's Mini Cooper? Where did that come
I
from?
mean, honestly, it's natural. It was probably my gene. Nothing to do with my family. I mean, my father was a doctor. He had no interest for the cars. And I started to dream in front of beautiful cars and in front of racing. And I still dream.
Did you ever think of pursuing medicine as a career?
That's what my father was hoping, but myself never. I mean, I thought my father, was working so hard. I was not prepared to do what he did. He was much braver than me.
You work incredibly long hours. But while we're talking about brain power, I've been told that you've got an exceptional mathematical brain. Is that true?
I mean, I have some facilities for counting. That's true.
Well, see, now, Jean, I've got, excuse the noise, if I was to put 7 numbers in front of you, how quickly would you be able to tell me what they add up to, do you think?
I don't know.
Can we try? This is an experiment.
A long time I did not do that.
Can we try?
Okay, let's try.
Okay, look, here's 7 numbers. I'm just putting them down in front of you now. Total. So
16, 18.
That's incredible. That is incredible. So, folks at home, I've just put, as I say, 7 numbers, 1,023 plus 456, etc. And you're absolutely right with that. So if I was to say to you, Jean, do you know to how many decimal places can you remember the value of pi?
Can what?
You know pi, the fixed number you use for working out the circumference of a circle? Do you know how many decimal? Because a lot of people will say, it's 3.14, but some people can go 3.14 and list a whole load of numbers. Can you?
No, I cannot.
That's a great party trick. Sean, it's a great party trick. How useful too, I suppose, on the pit wall. But Jean, you say your career is one of different stages. We must talk to you about the FIA now.
I thought you wanted to play backgammon with me.
No, I'm intimidated at playing any game.
I love that.
Is backgammon something you play a lot?
I mean, unfortunately, no. I would love to play more, but unfortunately, I don't have time.
Yeah. But how different is your role as president of the FIA to everything you've done before?
I mean, clearly, it's a different role. I will say sometimes you wonder why you do something. So when I was running teams, I could say I do that because I want to win and I want to be well paid. And being president of the FIA, it's very difficult to assess the result of what you do, and you do that as a volunteer. So probably it's answer to some of your questions. And I go back to, probably, you arrive in a different chapter of your life and you think you have been so blessed to enjoy some success in a world which was always a fascination for you, which still is. You approach it differently and you want to give something back. So I really feel I'm now in this part of my life where I want to use the credit I've been able to obtain over the decade and to give it back to the sport, to make roads safer around the world, to be able to create more awareness about this terrible pandemic. So I'm really attracted by all those challenges, and being president of the FIA, being the UN Secretary General Special Envoy for Road Safety, give me the platform to do it.
You're midway through your final term, so there's still more to do, but what achievements are you most proud of?
I mean, I would not use the word proud of, because I think in the life, you should not be proud of anything. But probably have different interests now in my life. As I was saying earlier, I feel so blessed compared to so many other people, and I think you must try to give the hand to people who don't have those facilities, or sometimes who are ill, or sometimes who are living in poverty. When I think about those 70 million of refugees around the world and all that, you want to do something. You want to do something because you feel it's unfair to have those people in those tragic situations. And again, we are so blessed to be living in a little controversies. But that's a different part of the life.
Do you think with all your experience, and I suppose with age as well, you've developed a sense of perspective that helps you in your role as president?
Definitely all what I've learned is helping me to do things, to do different things, to achieve different things, to have different interests, and I've learned a lot of things where I can be now a contributor, and that are my new challenges. I faced a challenge as a co-driver, as a team director, as a CEO, and now I have different challenges. I founded with a group of friends a medical institute, which is Brain and Spinal Cord Institute, where we have 700 people working on research for brain and spinal cord. We are now number 2 in the world, starting that less than 10 years ago. We were talking about other responsibility, have some other interest. So, in a way, I'm blessed at my age to be able to have the passion, to have the health, and I must enjoy as long as it will last me.
How interesting that medicine did come and get you eventually.
That is true. That is true. Sometimes, you can think of your roads, but I must say my life has required very often the support of medicine and doctors. So I spent my childhood next to my father, who was a doctor, and my professional career I've been very often also along with doctors to face emergency cases.
Now you say you're developing these other interests, but looking from the outside in, you seem to always work. Are you a workaholic?
Workaholic?
Workaholic. Do you just work the whole time?
How do you have time
it's
for interest? I tell you, by nature I'm lazy, but I'm committed. If I commit to do something, I will do it. And I'm very committed. It goes above my laziness. But, if I had no commitment, I'm sure I will be able to do very little. So let's keep that for the next chapter.
Keep that. Well, another chapter I did just want to quickly ask you about was from a Formula One perspective. I think one of your legacies is you've developed this much closer partnership with Formula One. And you're now working with Ross Brawn, of course, who was one of your architects of the success of Ferrari. How different is the relationship with Ross now compared to when you were batting for the same side?
So, first of all, I had great relationship with Bernie. And you must always have good memory. If I went into Formula One because it was supported by Bernie at the beginning. I remember Bernie was the one to give my name to Montezemolo and to the Agnelli family by saying, this guy you should consider. And when I was exercising my responsibilities at Ferrari, I was very close to Bernie. When I became president of the FIA, of course, it changed his habits. And we had sometimes some tension, some disagreement, but we are still friends, So, of course, then when Chase arrived with his new team, it was a learning process, and it went very well. And as you say, I knew, of course, very well Ross, who over the years became a friend, and it's a facilitator on daily basis, saying that due to, the way our structure, our organization is working, I do deal much more on daily basis with Chase, and then my people are dealing with Ross or with Sean branches. But I will say things go in a very smooth way, because very often, we have the same views. If we don't have the same views, we do agree of what should be the best for Formula One. So that makes a working relationship very pleasant, and very constructive.
You mentioned Bernie. How much of a supporter of Ferrari was Bernie when he was in charge?
No, once I was in charge, he was never a support. It's he was doing his job, I was doing my job, and we were working closely together. But fortunately, I never had to ask him anything.
Did you ever play backgammon with him?
Yeah, but I must say, he still needs to learn a lot.
And Jean, with a look to 2021, how sure are you that Formula One, the FIA, and the teams will get it right with the regulations?
Everybody will put its utmost, to achieve what we want to achieve. But I'm confident. It's a very complex situation, very complex because it's not easy. But I'm confident that, over the next 3 months, we will be able to optimize in order to have a great future for Formula One.
And if there's one thing you would like those regulations to achieve, what is it? Is it closer racing? Is it?
No, it's of course you will have races more unpredictable, and more fight for the win, But it's unfortunately it's in the essence of motor racing, of Formula One, even on the sport. You can see, in a lot of categories of sport, for years, you have the same people who are on top of it. So, clearly, closer competition, closer racing, and good racing.
Do you think it's bad for any sport when one person dominates? You've been there with Ferrari, but other sports...
when you are in this privileged position, you enjoy it.
Do you think Formula One suffered as a whole when you were dominating with Ferrari?
People complain, but that's human nature. People will always complain. So at the end of the day, you must try to do what you feel is good for the sport, knowing that people will complain. But at least you must be convinced that you make the right decisions. And then things will go the way they should go.
And just one final question on the here and now. The stewards, we're talking of decisions, they've been in the news a bit this year. Are we likely to see any change in the stewarding of Formula One? Do you think permanent stewards would be an answer? What are your thoughts on that?
whatever is decided, you will never make unanimity. So what is very important is to have the most professional people. I think we have very good stewards. The driver's contribution is very important. Maybe we need to define more what is let them race, because again, the let them race is a very difficult interpretation. We need to address also circuit design, which is a big factor. For the drivers to drive, for the stewards to interpret. So I would say, again, that is a complex problem which we need to address. But I'm optimistic that we are able to address it properly. But still, as I said, controversy is part of the business,
And did it upset you that the stewards in Canada, for example, got a lot of criticism from the outside world?
But you take in motor racing, so Formula One, but you take in football, you take in whatever is a sport, you will always have complaints. That's like the stolen car. That's part of the history.
Okay. Well, Jean, you've got 30 months to go until this final term as president comes to an end. Have you stopped to think about what comes next?
It's related to many things. First, to health. You don't know. Then, to what will be my passion? What will be my motivation? Again, we're talking about chapters. Maybe my passion, my motivation is finally to go and use some of the cars in front of which I was dreaming when I was a teenager, which I have in the garage. Maybe is still doing things for others in other camp of activities. So, I will have, I'm sure, a lot of opportunities to keep me busy if I want to be busy. And at the moment, for me, each day I put the maximum effort in what I've been elected to do or I've been chosen to do. And I'm not yet thinking 30 years in front of me. 30 months in front of me.
But are you, you've been on the rev limiter for 40 years now. You haven't stopped.
No, more than that, because I started my career as a co-driver at 66. So 53, you were not born.
No, I wasn't. But do you envisage a time where you will actually relax a little and, as you say, maybe take some cars
maybe in
out?
my nature it's difficult to relax. So again, I don't know. Time will tell. And something is sure, which is decided. I will publish a book, but not a book with a lot of photos, a kind of artistic book, and it will take me some time to do that.
I can't wait to read it. But what about your legacy then? When people in years to come reflect on you and your impact on the world of motorsport, what do you think?
But, I don't choose my legacy. People will decide what is my legacy. And so, as you said, some people, they have amazing memories. Maybe some other people, they don't have so good memories. So, that's a democracy. People who can think what they want.
Right. So my final questions to you are this. Who was the best driver, rallying, Formula One, Le Mans, best driver you ever worked with?
I hate these questions the best because in 53 years I have seen a lot of things. But clearly, the driver which is closest to my heart is Michael. Because, we have built so many things together, and it has been so difficult to do it. And as you know, I mean, Michael had become a close friend, and we know that, I mean, since now over 5 years, he had been in a difficult situation. So, of course, I mean, he's closer to my heart than anybody else.
Best car? Race, rally, Dakar?
No, I mean, best car, probably, you know, each period had its best car. I mean, the 205 was amazing. The 905 was amazing. The Ferrari was amazing. I must say, again, you know, I've been part of amazing teams with amazing cars. So I don't think it would be fair to say only one. But each chapter there have been some particular time in struggling and in success.
Best race or rally?
I mean, you know, in rallying, when I was running Peugeot, maybe that was the Southern Lakes in 84 or 85, the first rally we win. Because I was wondering if one day we will win a rally, and it was the first one, so I said at least we will win one rally, and that was Southern Lakes. And in Formula One, clearly it's Suzuka 2000. Okay. That was the best success.
And in which chapter of your life do you think you've been happiest?
I've been?
Happiest.
I've never been happier, really. You know, I'm always anxious. So, I mean, I don't really know what is happiness, or, you know, for a few hours, but I mean, on long term, I don't know what is happiness. And I'm the most blessed person, you know. I've very interesting career, fantastic wife, amazing son. So good health.
But you still question what happiness is?
I do.
And so when you won all those rallies and races, but it was only momentary, the happiness.
Exactly.
So it's always the next. On to the next.
You know, always having the tendency to look at what could be better.
Jean, thank you very much for your time.
Welcome.
Love the chat. Thank you. So many little gems in that conversation. Jean's description of Michael Schumacher, the man, how he went about hiring Ross Brawn and Rory Byrne, the fact that he wanted to leave Ferrari at the end of 2004, the stolen car on the Paris-Dakar rally, and that numbers trick, seriously cool. And it helps explain why Jean always had a stopwatch around his neck on the pit wall. He could crunch numbers as fast as any computer. Thanks, Jean, for your time and for sharing your memories. Well, that's it for this episode, but we'll be back next week with another big name from the world of F1. Until then, why not subscribe to Beyond the Grid if you haven't already? We're on all of your favourite podcast apps, including Apple and Spotify. And thanks for your feedback about last week's episode with Derek Warwick. It was a cracker, wasn't it? Derek's openness left an impression on many of you, including Costis Deviant. What an amazing podcast with Derek, he says. It had everything: fights, dramas, comedy, tragedy. It was like a movie for our ears. Well, it was indeed, wasn't it? And thanks for your feedback, Costis, and please keep it coming because we really love hearing from you, all of you. And remember to use the hashtag F1BeyondTheGrid, and you can tweet me at TomClarksonF1. Beyond the Grid is produced by F1 in association with Audio Boom. Until next time, keep it flat out.